in this tough time, Barco is playing a pretty important role, especially with the medical equipment. Now, can you shed a little bit more light to remote location testing, the power of radiology or the lack thereof, and the overusage of it? Please share your thoughts on that.
So, one of the things that people should always consider is that hospitals, imaging centers invest a lot in very expensive, high-end, best technology equipment with the intention to get the best possible image quality out. But image quality is like a chain. The picture is taken by a kind of a camera system called a modality, then goes to a PAC software that does a couple of things with it, and finally ends up on a display where the picture is made that is presented to the radiologist. But it is that picture that determines whether something is alive and dead. Yeah. So therefore, it is important that the final quality of an imaging chain is determined by the weakest part in the whole chain. And therefore, you cannot really add a crappy display at the end of the display of the imaging chain, because that will determine the total quality of the chain. So Barco is for many years already working on the best quality displays, making sure that the radiologist sees the smallest clinical display details that are important to him on the display. So and that is something that we focus on. And one of the things is a display can also add noise to the system. And one of the things that we brought also with our displays as our suite of intuitive workflow tools, we call it, that with the most known one is the spot view, which basically in a region of interest can improve the image quality in such a way that the radiologist is able to even see the important details much better. And this can be pretty important.
Absolutely, and you're spot on that, because I think that the technology, which is the enabler over here, should help our team members remotely do the best they can and to the best of their ability. So it's a pretty important deck as far as I'm concerned. Yeah, thank you for that. So the fact that they have access to the equipment, how good and precise is remote reading for these people? Because making it to the hospitals is a pretty tough challenge right about now. And a dangerous one, right?
Right, that's absolutely right. And a very good question. But I would like to counter with a question. Would you as a patient expect your diagnosis to be done at a lower quality because it was done at home instead of the hospital? Of course
That's interesting. No, but is it being done at a low quality if it's being done remotely?
Well, that is, nobody wants that the quality done at the remote site is lower. The radiologist that makes the diagnosis is the same. So therefore, the equipment should be of the same quality. So usually when hospitals or radiologists invest in, let's say, infrastructure for remote reading, they look at the same kind of quality for the display. Also, when you look internationally, for instance, the American College of Radiology recommends a professional standard, and it does not matter whether you read from a remote site or whether you read inside the hospitals. Therefore, when you, let's say, buy a diagnostic display, they always come with that kind of compliance guarantee. So we have done also a number of studies where we have seen that when radiologists read on a diagnostic display, that they actually read faster. So they can do more studies in an hour. And of course, you could argue if you really need to, let's say, just need to read one or two cases at home in a month, whether you need that very expensive equipment. But when you start to do that on a regular base, then that productivity also becomes pretty important. And that is one of the topics also Barco is working on, that we work on the productivity of our systems. They come with the intuitive workflow tools. We recommend, let's say, displays that allow the radiologist to read faster and see, let's say, the same kind of details as they would see in a hospital. Therefore, the quality of these home reading stations is guaranteed whether they work at home.
Absolutely, and you're spot on, because you know what? We believe in the technology. We shouldn't be always double guessing tech. The tech is available. As long as you do not take shortcuts, I think you can get similar quality of work remotely that you can get in a building. Because at the end of the day, it's the same equipment, and like you said, the same personnel. So we should start having faith in things happening remotely. In fact, COVID-19 has made that happen for everybody. A radiologist who's working remotely is getting multiple requests from different hospitals who probably are using different equipment. How is he or she guaranteeing that they can, one, read all and do it to the best of the ability?
Yeah, so that is that is true, of course, for those radiologists that read for different hospitals. So we see that first of all, we talk about different modalities in the hospitals, so that are bought from different vendors. So in the healthcare industry, for already quite long time, there of course exist certain standards that let's say make sure that the images that are taken, the CT images, that complies to a certain format. So therefore, it's quite easy to let's say put those images then in a kind of a central archive, and later on the radiologist, whether in the hospital or remotely, can through some way get access to these images and start reading that. That said, the answer is a little bit mixed. If you look into, for instance, the very latest equipment that has, as technology progresses, always a better, for instance, a better image quality. And just remember the discussion that we just had. If let's say the technology would make a huge step forward, and for instance quadruple the resolution, for instance, of a certain technology, yeah, and you use a much lower resolution display at some point in time, or another piece of equipment, it might be that these are not an ideal match for each other. So also there, it can be that the display becomes the weakest part of the imaging chain. And therefore, one particular example, for instance, was when, for instance, Hologic, who was the first to bring breast tomosynthesis to the market, it came together with a special display that was developed for breast tomosynthesis, because we could clinical proof that, for instance, microcalcification on that kind of the display could be seen more easily than with other displays that we had for the normal 2D mammography. So it's an important link that you have to take into account. But for all the other cases, I would say if you use a diagnostic display, in most of the cases, they are capable of dealing with, let's say, images coming from multiple modalities. Of course, we also have what we call multimodality displays that can handle CT, MR, chest, color, grayscale images. Of course, they have a broader range of imaging modalities that they can handle than certain displays that are, for instance, just intended for cross-sectional imaging.
No, that's interesting. So that just leads me to my very next question, because you were talking about multiple touch points, excuse me, and that means multiple links, which means multiple points of failure, maybe, which is security. So how secure is this platform?
Yeah. So when we talk about security, Barco is in fact only providing the hardware as part of the system. The software component is usually not controlled by us. That is the hospital that provides the secure infrastructure, either through VPN, secure cloud, which allows then the radiologist to connect to the PACS system of the hospital or of the site they are reading for. So what is then special about the remote reading stations of Barco? So what we can do for security, of course, you can say a radiologist working at home, he can simply go to a computer shop, put a computer in there, and maybe he can start working. But maybe his kids can play with it. There is no access security. Is the proper antivirus software is installed in there? A second option is that, for instance, the radiologist can have his working laptop from the hospital, where all the security of the hospital is already pre-installed. Take that one home. But then how do you connect a laptop with 2 or 3 of these let's say diagnostic displays to start reading from home? And that is where that EGFX solution of Barco comes into play, which is basically like a small box that has all the hardware inside to drive diagnostic display, and you simply have to connect it with a single cable. It's like a Thunderbolt-like interface that you put in that box, and off you go. And then when the, let's say, it's easy for maintenance, if the radiologist move back to the hospital, they can update the security, it's part of the network, etc. So this is the way how we provide the security at home. One additional very important process, we just said that diagnostic displays need to comply with certain regulation, and one of them, they need to be DICOM calibrated. But how do you do that at home? Can you send a physicist over to every home? It's probably not possible. So therefore, Barco also has means integrated in a diagnostic display together with a secure cloud-based solution that can do all this calibration without radiology intervention from the cloud, and follow up from the cloud what the status of this display is. Is it still calibrated? Is there an issue? So that is all something that can be easily followed up without any concern.
Okay, well, that's awesome, because the more I'm listening to you and the more you're telling me about this, and the more that we are sinking into the various different aspects of Barco's capability in helping on the remote side with the displays and keeping it all secure. A natural question comes to my mind is, any examples that come top of your mind in the COVID-19 era that Barco has can openly discuss?
Oh, we had, in fact, a lot of them, and I think probably more press releases will follow soon. One that has been out recently, for instance, was a radiology department at the Royal Wolverton in the UK. So where the hospital looked at the main components that make up a diagnostic reporting workstation, and together with their trusted suppliers, among one which was Barco, they determined a solution that met their PACS specification requirements. And then following discussions with their senior radiologist, they opted for a compact light workstation, and together with the Barco Fusion 6MP display, together with the, let's say, all the tools to ensure that it can be calibrated at the remote site. That tool is called QA Web Enterprise. It also came with the intuitive workflow tools to make sure that all these productivity enhancements were also available at the remote reading site.
Okay.
So
awesome.
For instance, another one closer to home maybe was a quote that we got from, let me think a moment, what was that again? That was from Dr. Balaji Rangarajan. So his quote was, it has not been an easy task, and a lot of effort has gone in for numerous people to actually see our vision of making home reporting a reality. Radiology and IT have worked extraordinarily well together, and despite the timing with COVID, things have happened at a very good pace. So they actually also, let's say, have succeeded during this crisis to bring a kind of a solution towards life. And I guess in all parts of the world, you will see that these messages and quotes and success stories will start to pop up.
Everybody talks about the new norm. The new norm means what in the imagery space, according to you, sir?
Well, a new norm has multiple phases. So first of all, I believe that healthcare will be at the center of the new normal in the post-corona era. And what will happen, people have seen how important healthcare is, and that has not always been the case in recent years, where we have seen that governments, because of the economic crisis starting in 2008, have done nothing else than reducing healthcare budgets in many parts of the world. So I see now a trend that people definitely will push their governments and make sure that it is part of a political agenda and force them to spend more attention and budgets to it. So we, in the beginning, we also mentioned that the telemedicine trend is something that is probably here to stay. We discussed the radiologists that will be reading from home. They were already doing that, let's say, from the point of view from a work-life balance, but this is definitely something that is here to stay. And it's also something that probably the hospitals will be banking on it during a pandemic, because they want a kind of a strategic reserve of radiologists that are sitting at a safe place and not getting sick in order to diagnose the patients. So another part that is important, that governments probably have seen that their deficits escalated through this crisis. So initially, a lot of the money went to protective gear, consumables, medicines for the people who got sick. So the question is, if they, in the years to come, need to address, let's say, or allocate additional budgets to healthcare, where will they invest first? So will it building additional ICUs so that they can deal better with that? Will it be breathing equipment? Will it be, let's say, imaging equipment? So the question remains at this point in time, or the answer remains a little bit fuzzy to this question. We will see what brings the future, but what is certain is that there will be more attention to healthcare moving forward.
No, absolutely. Sorry, go on.
So for the, you also asked about what will happen towards medical imaging. So I think that is also not quite clear, as I just mentioned. There was definitely also a ramping up of availability of mobile systems and portable imaging equipment, as it helped to increase options to image patients inside and outside the healthcare facility. So this was something that was done to help reducing the spread of the COVID-19 crisis. So another topic, let's say in imaging, was with everybody sitting at home, and that is not only the case for radiologists, but I guess for everybody, the need for collaboration with all your colleagues is increasing. So probably towards the future we will need even better tools to collaborate better between clinicians. For us, I think in healthcare, as imaging equipment will be duplicated, there will definitely be a need for more display systems. At least I hope so for Barco. So that is something that is probably a trend that will be there.
Absolutely. And you're right. You know what? I agree with you. It's going to be in all the parts. It cannot be isolated to one part. It's got to be in the beds. It's got to be in the facilities. It's got to be in the industry use and the equipment too. But the West, or I'm going to say the US, Europe, is far more adaptive to the healthcare system. What do you think is the future of that in APAC?
I think you already saw some adaptation in there. In the beginning, we mentioned that the search and the number of patients that they are using telemedicine platforms and related applications in Asia Pacific already indicated a very fast adoption. Something that usually takes years now happened across a period of a couple of months. So that is definitely already something that was there. And for instance, it happened very fast in China. They probably had the most severe lockdown of the whole world, and also could contain, let's say, the spread of the disease pretty fast if you compare it to where other countries are these days. But you're absolutely right. There's indeed a difference. So China, Japan, Singapore, and Australia, for instance, are probably ahead of the adoption curve, and they're driving more the digital help. Other countries that might be followers probably include India, but also there you see, like with the Step One platform, that already much faster adoption takes place than on previous occasions. But of course, we never were confronted with a kind of a similar pandemic, at least not in my lifetime. So I think in some Asian countries, like probably Japan, you see that patients are conservative and they prefer a face-to-face appointment with their doctor, but still there was like a kind of a rapid adoption of telemedicine. But probably there, as soon as people can return, there might be a bigger share that goes back to, let's say, a real life, let's say, visit to the doctor instead of a virtual meeting.
Well, thank you for that. And I think I agree with you in quite a few things over there. But I'm also a very firm believer in the future, and that culture has shifted a little bit for the first time. And I think that's what's going to drive the next wave and change. And if this continues the way it is continuing, then culture is going to get suppressed more, and new habits are going to come into play. So I'm positive that will help drive the new changes within Asia Pacific too on this. Geert, I thank you very, very much for your time. This has been a very interesting and fascinating, dialogue with you.
Thank you, Mohit, for the interesting questions and the opportunity for Barco to present or discuss today with you all these very interesting topics. And let's hope, for the sake of the world, that we get this pandemic soon behind us for the health of all the people. I would just say to you all, stay safe.
Yes. Thank you very much. Same to you in Belgium. Okay, enjoy the rest of your day. Okay, this is OpenGov TV signing off. Thank you very much.